Okay, thank you everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of Angus Council. Mr. McCaskill or Mrs. Anderson, are there any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, there is, Deputy Provost. There is apologies from the Provost, and also Councillor Fairweather has intimated that he's attending a funeral today and he will be late, but he does hope to attend part of the meeting. Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCaskill. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. Item 11, report 3621. I'm a council appointed director of Angus Alive.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Anyone else? Councillor Devine?
It would be the same for me, Angus Alive.
Okay, thank you very much. No one else?
Excuse me, Deputy Provost, it's Jackie Buchanan. Could
Hello.
could I ask each councillor to confirm the nature of their declaration of interest in terms of which category that they're declaring it, please? Is it a specific exclusion? It's just for the purposes of the minutes.
Councillor Duff?
I think it is a specific exclusion. That's my understanding.
Specific exclusion.
Thank you both.
Okay, thank you, Councillors Duff and Devine and Mrs. Buchanan. Members, agenda item number 3, minutes of council and committees. We are asked to approve the minutes of the special Angus Council meeting of the 15th of December 2020 and the full Angus Council meeting of the 17th of December 2020. Do we agree these as true and correct records?
Agree.
Okay, thank you very much. 3.2, you've got minutes of committees. They're submitted for information. The minutes of the following committees: Development Standards, Development Management Review, Civic Licensing, Communities and Scrutiny and Audit. Do we agree to note these minutes?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, Tayside Contracts Joint Committee. Councillor Macmillan Douglas has resigned as a member of Tayside Contracts Joint Committee, and accordingly the council is asked to fill this vacancy. From the chair, I'm going to propose Councillor Tommy Stewart. Councillor Macmillan Douglas?
I'd like to second Councillor Stewart, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And Angus Alive, Councillor Colin Brown has resigned as a director of Angus Alive, and accordingly the council is asked to fill the vacancy. So again, from the chair, I'm going to move that Councillor Wan is appointed director of Angus Alive. Councillor Macmillan Douglas?
I'd like to second Councillor Wan as director of Angus Alive.
Thank you very much. Members, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wan?
Yeah, Councillor Fotheringham, thank you, Chair. I would just like to declare an interest now that I've been appointed as a director in agenda item number 11, by the virtue of my directorship of Angus Alive. However, a specific exclusion applies, and therefore I will remain and participate in that agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wan. Members, agenda item number 5 is the report on the Angus Adult Protection Committee Biannual Report 2018 to 20. Mrs. Williamson, I believe you are going to introduce your report.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Good afternoon, elected members. Hope you're all well and keeping well during this challenging time. It's great to see everybody on the call. This is the biannual report of the Multi-Agency Adult Protection Committee, and it's signed off by myself as Chief Officer, Karen Anderson, who is the lead officer from NHS Tayside, and Nicola Shepherd, the Detective Superintendent from Police Scotland. We are the responsible and accountable officers for adult protection in Angus, and what the report outlines is the work that's been done to improve the lives of our vulnerable population. It's a statutory requirement for us to bring this report, and on the 26th of January, it went to our Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and members asked officers who were accountable, as well as the independent chair, relevant and appropriate performance questions based on this report. As you will have seen, there's much to be positive about in the report, but there are also areas for improvement. And I just want to mention a few of these. During the period 2018 to March 2020, there's been an increase in referrals for the multi-agency review of our practice. The purpose of reviews is really to identify good practice, but also to identify any improvements. But what we look at, particularly as chief officers, is any improvements that keep coming up, trends. And one of these is around our chronologies and our ability to have good quality chronologies across all agencies that paint the full picture of someone's lives. So there's work to be done on that one. And secondly, our risk assessments, and that's one that we've picked up as chief officers. In 2018, there were 2 referrals for initial case reviews, and one of these progressed to a significant case review. That one will be published in due course. In 2019, there was another 2 referrals for initial case reviews, again with one progressing to a significant case review. Of note, during this period, we have focused on staff development and improvement and increasing awareness and learning of all our workforce, that's the multi-agency workforce, who deal with our vulnerable people in Angus. An inspection into adult services was due. These are on a cycle, and each authority has an inspection, usually by the Care Inspectorate, sometimes by the Care Inspectorate and the Health Improvement Scotland, to look into our progress, an independent assessment of how we are doing. Now that's been delayed due to COVID, but we've continued on our own work of self-evaluation in adult protection within Angus. We know our services well, we know our improvement areas well, and we're very fortunate in Angus to have an independent chair who chairs the Adult Protection Committee, and that's Ewan West. And Ewan West attended scrutiny and audit and actually presented this report to the members who attended there. He does an outstanding job for us. I really want to commend the work that he does, challenging officers, challenging our performance, keeping us on our toes. And he and the Adult Protection Committee guide and direct our improvement. Finally, we anticipate and are experiencing an increase in adults requiring multi-agency support at this time. I don't suppose that's any huge surprise to people. And we are mobilising as much of a multi-agency response as we can to that at the moment. Today, George Bowie, who's the Vice Chair of Adult Protection, and Catherine Lindsay, who is well known to you as our Chief Social Work Officer, is here, and myself and George and Catherine are happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Williamson. Councillor Devine?
It's really a comment.
Okay.
Deputy Provost. Yeah.
Any questions then? Oh, no questions. Okay, Councillor Devine, on you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as Mrs. Williamson has said, this came to scrutiny and audit quite recently, and particularly SNP councillors asked a lot of questions of Ewan West. We found it an excellent report, and I felt it was a really honest report, as Margot has actually said, because it pulled no punches and clearly itemised areas for improvement. We felt that the chair, Ewan West, was totally on top of every aspect, and we came away after hearing his answers feeling that any improvements required would be fulfilled. We'd like to record our thanks to everyone working in this very challenging area, particularly at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Boyd?
Yes, it was just similar type things. We did bring this up in front of scrutiny and audit, and it was discussed in length. And just the extra comment I would like to make is, look, thank you very much to George for all the hard work he does. Any cases I bring to him, he deals with them very swiftly and as efficiently as they can be done. So keep that difficult plate spinning, George, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Anyone else? Councillor Speed? Councillor Speed, I thought you were wanting to move this report. No. Okay, then I'm going to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I just had difficulties coming in there. I'd quite like to move this report, if that's okay.
On you go. Yes, of course it is.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay. I think I've got a delay in my IT.
Yeah, I've got a problem with my camera today too.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I welcome this report as the protection, safety and well-being of all our residents in Angus has to be our utmost priority, and it's crucial that we have the correct systems and processes in place to ensure that people can raise a concern if they believe that someone is at risk of harm, should that be a professional or member of the public, and it's vital that people are able to raise the welfare concerns in a safe and supportive environment. And I would urge anyone with concerns to make contact through the appropriate channels. Those that require adult support and protection, their experience has to be the best that we can possibly offer to ensure best outcomes. There is no doubt the pandemic has placed some of our most vulnerable at further risk, and that needs to be recognised that physical, emotional, financial and sexual abuse and exploitation does not stop because of a pandemic, and neither should or has our response. I'm pleased to see within this report that service user involvement is a top priority, and this participation work is being supported by Angus Independent Advocacy, a key organisation who do a remarkable job in supporting people to have their voice and views heard. And as is highlighted within this report, access to an advocate is something that we must ensure is being offered and available within the adult support and protection process. As has already been highlighted, there has been some good works demonstrated, but also areas for improvement, and this is something that we must all keep a close eye on. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed. Members, you have the report in front of you, and the one recommendation is the report agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, the next agenda item is agenda item number 6, support to vulnerable persons in connection with criminal investigations proceedings. Mrs. Buchanan or Mr. Bowie, do you want to introduce this report?
I'm quite happy to introduce it, Deputy Provost, and if there's any technical questions in relation to the service, I think we have someone here to respond to those.
Okay, thank you very much.
As members will see, the report is to advise them of the legal duties on the Council in respect of providing support to vulnerable persons in connection with criminal investigations and proceedings, and to ask Council to delegate the discharge of these functions to an officer of the Council. The recommendation goes on to recommend that that delegation be provided to the Chief Integration Officer, and I would ask just for a slight amendment to that to include the Interim Chief Integration Officer who's in post at the moment. Since the 1990s, a non-statutory service has been in place and has been provided in Angus by Social Work Services. By dint of Section 42, there's a new duty which requires the police to request support for vulnerable individuals in their custody and for the Council to provide this. The Act defines appropriate adult support as support to help a person in custody to understand what's happening, and also to facilitate effective communication between that person and the police, and also such other support for vulnerable persons in connection with a criminal investigation or criminal proceedings as the Scottish Ministers may specify. Paragraph 2.4 of the report gives the different definitions in effect of vulnerable persons and the situations where the duty does apply. The Care Inspectorate has the function of assessing the quality of whatever arrangements may be in place, and each local authority has the function of ensuring that people are available to provide the appropriate adult support when it's required. In terms of within Angus and the wider Tayside, it was agreed in June 2020 that the support would be jointly commissioned and procured on a Tayside basis, and Perth and Ross have agreed to progress this. In relation to financial implications, the Angus allocation is approximately £22,000 per annum. It's anticipated that the cost of providing the service will not exceed £38,000 per annum, and it's expected that this cost will be met from the Scottish Government funding and existing budgets, so there should be no additional financial implications arising from the report. And understand that Mr. Troop is here if there's any questions on the actual service required. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Buchanan. Any questions? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Convener. Thanks for that report. I have a couple of details that I want clarity on. Is Perth and Kinross progressing on this on a Tayside-wide basis, hosting the Angus service, or is Angus taking charge of our element of that? I didn't find that 100% clear, and I just wondered, have we been unable to provide this service to people needing support for a while, and if so, what are the details of that? And I'd also quite like to know how many appropriate adults we've got involved in the scheme at the minute, and is it enough to meet capacity? Thanks.
Okay. Is this one for Mr. Troop? Yes, on you go. Thank you.
The service for the last 20 years has been provided by Police Scotland, previously Tayside Police, on behalf of the 3 councils and NHS Tayside. That has approximately 12 appropriate adults, and that has met all our demands, and it's been a very well run and well received service. It's due to the statutory changes that Police Scotland are no longer able to provide that. So following a meeting between the 3 partners and Police Scotland last year, it was agreed that we would continue with a Tayside-wide service, as historically that's been successful, and Angus would benefit from economies of scale, and that one of the local authorities, in this case Perth and Kinross, would commission that on our behalf. So at the moment the service is still being provided for us by Police Scotland. They will continue to do that until the new service is commissioned by Perth and Kinross on behalf of all of Tayside.
That's great. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that.
Okay, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. My question might have been answered really, but I was wondering if Angus Independent Advocacy, which Councillor Speed was speaking about earlier, was perhaps going to be involved in this. But I guess if you've got people trained up and it's going to be on a Tayside basis, that may not be appropriate. But they are such a very good organisation and provide very similar kind of advice.
Yes, I would agree. Across Scotland, there are a number of advocacy services provide that, so any organisation with the appropriate background and skills will be able to tender for this across Tayside.
Okay, Councillor Devine. Okay, thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Just one quick question, just for clarity. Who is the Chief Integration Officer? And if we have an interim at the moment, who is that person? Because it doesn't make it clear who within this organisation is the lead.
Mrs. Buchanan, is this one for you or Mr. Troop?
I'm quite happy to, either of us could respond. The reason why the name's not given, I suppose, is because the delegation's given to the post holder. We do have an interim Chief Integration Officer, and that's Gail Smith. And Gail, I'm sure, would have been with us today if she could have been, and Mr. Troop's here on her behalf.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't actually after specific names, just the post that is holding that title. Yes,
it's the interim. It's an interim post at the moment, and I clarified that in terms of the recommendation to ensure that the delegation is provided on that basis also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hand.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I just wanted to ask, obviously this is about improving communication, and certainly that the service on a non-statutory basis has been around for quite a while. How is the service likely to interact with the provision of interpretation and translation services? I'm just a bit, thinking, well, we need to make sure that there's not too many people around, but nor do we want people to fall down the communication gap either, if English isn't the first language or BSL is as well. So I just wonder what interaction there's going to be with interpretation and translation.
Okay, Mr. Troop.
Yes, they are important elements, and when we devise a service specification that would be included in part of the commission process, that we would need to give that due consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hans. Councillor Speed?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to kind of extend that a bit further with regards to supporting people who, as Councillor Hans has touched on, may have a language or communication barrier, and just really looking for an assurance that that would also kind of incorporate other people with protected characteristics such as a disability or autism, who may also experience communication and a difficulty in understanding what's happening during that process.
Yes, there is guidance for local authorities that came out January last year, January 2020, which covered these elements. So again, we would ensure that that was put in the service specification if we put that out to tender to a third sector or independent sector organisation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Any other questions? Comments? No comments. Okay, we have the two recommendations in front of us. One is to note, and the other one, with Mrs. Buchanan's wording earlier on, is to agree to delegate authority to the Chief Integration Officer, but also at the moment the Interim Chief Integration Officer. Do we agree these recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 7, members, is the recommendation to pass bylaws. And you will see the report here in front of you, agenda item number 7. We did establish a working group of 4 members of the licensing board, representatives from Police Scotland, our licensing standards officer, and one of our deputy clerks to the licensing board, and we met on the 30th of October last year, and at that we determined then that there was no evidence to support making material changes to the existing bylaws. So on that basis, you have the report in front of you. Is there any questions? Any comments? No. Is the report then agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Now you're all aware that agenda item number 8 has been withdrawn and will be presented to a future meeting of this council. So that takes us now on to agenda item number 9, which is the review of remote meetings. You have the report in front of you.
Deputy Provost, can I make note of an amendment, please?
Yes, Councillor Cheap, you certainly can.
I also have a question.
Yes, so we'll just go straight to questions. Any questions? Councillor MacDonald?
Thank you, convener. I found this paper interesting. We've got 2 recommendations that seem perfectly straightforward, recommending that the council and committee meetings continue to be held remotely on the current basis is point 1. Well, as I understand it, the current basis is that meetings are recorded and live streamed on YouTube, and the recordings then remain on YouTube available to watch. That's what I understand to be the current basis. So this is great for a number of reasons. One of the main ones, however, is it affords greater scrutiny. Scrutiny by the public who can't watch the meetings live, and it allows the public to catch up on decisions that impact them directly and give the opportunity for them to question us as councillors. Not everybody is free on a Thursday from 2 o'clock, and we've actually stumbled onto something great here. The YouTube figures are also surprisingly good. So it gets down, and this is where my questions come in, to the discussion of the recommendations. In the general section, in the background section, sorry, Angus Council rightly, in my view, pats itself on the back in paragraph 3. It commends the positive steps in engagement, but then in paragraph 5 goes on to say that YouTube recordings will be deleted immediately after the meeting. Surely the deletion of the recording should form part of the recommendations so that we have the opportunity to amend. I can't amend the general part of that paper as I understand it. I would be incredibly disappointed to see the archive of council meetings go, and as the report says itself, it is very much a positive step both in terms of the council's digital strategy and wider public engagement.
Councillor MacDonald,
then why does it say that meetings will only be recorded? I've got the questions are in this here.
Okay.
Then why does it say that meetings will only be recorded until the final minute of the meeting? trying to provide a bit of context, Councillor Fotheringham, if that's who made this decision and why it is in the background of the report, is what I'm asking. It's not a good look for the council, and I speak for the SNP group when we say we welcome the additional level of scrutiny. The explanation that this is for data protection principles raises more questions than it provides explanations for. Where does this leave us in these data protection principles for all of the meetings currently online? And how does this compare with our neighbours in Aberdeenshire Council, who have a digital archive of their meetings? The Scottish Parliament also has a substantial archive in their meetings, as does the UK Parliament. Members of the public also feature in these meetings. So I just wanted to know that we've got this schedule here that gives us two very straightforward recommendations, but in the body of the report, the section where it tells us that we're going to be changing the way that we conduct our meetings, which flies in the face of recommendation 1. So I just wanted to raise these questions and see if any of the officers could provide answers to them.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Buchanan, or will it be Mr. McCaskill?
I'm quite happy, Deputy Provost, to respond to Councillor MacDonald's questions in terms of the report. Just to answer the first aspect, Councillor MacDonald, absolutely members can determine that in terms of the detail in the body of the report, that they can change the proposals, and you'll see that it is just a proposal. In terms of the data protection principles, there is a principle that says that in terms of personal data, that we shouldn't keep personal data live longer than is deemed necessary, but members may think that in the circumstances they wish that to be longer than is proposed in terms of the background detail in the report, and that's something that members are free to discuss and make a decision on today if they so wish to do so.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Buchanan. Councillor Cheap, a question?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. It's a general one on page 105. The recommendation in amongst the background is that we move entirely to MS Teams in this report. And I'm just wondering why we're preferring MS Teams rather than Zoom, when I think the bulk of users find Zoom so much better and easier than Teams. Simple question, really.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Buchanan, thank you.
Yes, in terms of that, I'm just checking to see if Ms. Faulkner's here, but I know that generally there was considerations in terms of Zoom in relation to it being the best method, and Scottish Government have made comment on that. I think that's been updated recently, but Ms. Faulkner could come in if she's in the meeting. I'm not sure that she's with us today.
Don't see her.
Certainly what we can do is arrange to get the detail of that provided to members, Councillor Cheap. That's my understanding, that it's a sort of safer online modus using Teams as opposed to using Zoom. I think Zoom has become safer, and it may be that it can be used, and certainly Ms. Faulkner can update on that.
I think my only reply, began on that, is just, again, no matter what the Scottish Government says, it's the users that are key, I think, to this, especially when we're remote. So the easiest method we can find that is probably equally safe would be the best one, but we'll leave it in other people's hands to suggest the best one. I just think the feedback you'll be getting is that Zooms is easier and more practical to use than Teams.
Okay,
well,
thank you.
Certainly take on that feedback.
Councillor Boyd?
Yes, thank you. And it is a question this time, Craig. Question back to Jackie, just so I'm right in my own mind. Do we have to decide this bit about this today? The reason for that is that we spent a lot of time at the start of this administration debating the fact whether we should be recording the meetings anyway, and it was sort of, in my view, was put out because of the cost that it was going to involve. Now we've spent all these costs of sorting all these out, and we can now get this on things. I personally would like to think we either defer that part so we can all have a great discussion about it maybe at the next meeting, or let's discuss it just now. But does it need to be, the question I suppose is, does it need to be discussed today?
Mrs. Buchanan?
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. There's no imperative to decide that aspect of it today. And if members were so minded, they could certainly delay consideration of that.
Great, that's fine. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whiteside?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I was just going to comment that I agreed with everything that Councillor MacDonald said. It seems ridiculous to remove the recordings so quickly. Could I propose that we leave them in place until the end of each administration? I don't think there's any reason for this council to remove them as quickly when other councils are able to leave them in place, and it has improved the accessibility for people, for members of the public. It's great to see as many members of the public taking the time to look at the meetings, so that would be my proposal.
Thank you. Mrs. Buchanan, do you want to answer? Is that something that we can consider?
Certainly we could consider that. I'd like to check the data protection side of things. I hear what members are saying in terms of other organisations doing similar in relation to retaining the recordings for longer than is proposed in the report, and I could come back and provide further clarification on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sturrock.
Thank you, Chair. My issue concerns the operability of the systems. Excuse my voice. I prefer the Zoom, because every time we go into the Teams programme, I'm getting fed up saying, Ron, you're on mute. And you're talking and it goes on mute. It's an idiosyncrasy of the programme which needs to be fixed before I can be satisfied in using it properly. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a few members are having problems with their microphones. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd certainly like us to explore as to whether data protection has any holds over us having to remove the link straight away. I guess I was under the impression that it had to be removed. However, having heard from other colleagues around the table, I agree in terms of keeping our viewings open for the public. I don't then see if why we shouldn't if we can. I think that definitely needs to be explored. And in terms of Teams or Zooms, I think we do need to find out which method is the easiest, has the easiest access for the public.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. I very much agree with Councillor Speed. I think that the more open communications we can have, the better, and the easier we can make those communications, the better. I also have the belief that we were not allowed to keep information for more than the shortest period of time, but I would like some assurance about that, so we can balance defence of people's privacy against giving our constituents knowledge about what we were discussing and allowing them to reach their own conclusions.
Thank you, Councillor Macmillan Douglas. Councillor Brays.
Yes, thank you, Convener. It would appear to me that if we deem it essential in terms of GDPR to delete the films pretty much immediately, that would seem to infer that we've been breaking the law over recent months when we've been leaving them up a lot longer than immediately. I think we should be keeping them up as long as we're allowed to keep them up in terms of GDPR. And if it's not a problem for Aberdeenshire Council and the Scottish Government and the UK Parliament, I don't see why it should be a particular legal issue for Angus Council. But we'll see when it's looked into.
Thank you, Councillor Brays. Mrs. Buchanan.
I'm listening to members' discussion on this, Deputy Provost, and I would suggest that what I could do is bring back a further report on this aspect, and that will allow further discussion with the appropriate detail in front of members in relation to the data protection aspects.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Buchanan. Councillor Hand.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting as well that given that we have Zoom meetings for discussing papers that are already in the public arena, i.e. they're printed on the website several days prior to the meeting, so the content's already out there, and that stays out there ad infinitum as well, as long as the council's been in existence, the papers have been there, and then we go into private session for the more sensitive information. So to me, we've already got a system for papers, and the meeting process should just follow that, and it should stay open. I do wonder though, whilst we're looking at which system is the most accessible, etc., can we also look at the possibility of just using one system and stop having to go in between different platforms? And if people are having a problem with Teams, for example, there are keyboard shortcuts that people can use as well as using the mouse. So I wonder if maybe just a wee prompt card for members as well, depending on what system is used, that if the mouse isn't working properly, then the keyboard commands might be an alternative that we could use. Because I think ultimately being online has been absolutely excellent. It shows that we can be a digital council, and we're obviously leading by example for that, having meetings electronically, and also have been accountable with these meetings. But I do think there's a wee bit of work yet before the decisions can be made. But I really would like to see the meetings stay online and stay open.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hands. Mrs. Buchanan, do you wish to come back to Councillor Hands?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Hands. In terms of one system, you'll see that from previous reports we have said that the intention was to use Teams exclusively, and that's what we've been working towards. And in fact, I understand that the Zoom contract ends in March, and the plan is to fully roll out Teams. And what I would suggest, therefore, in terms of the further report that I've suggested we could bring, is that we cover this aspect off too. And if members are having difficulty with Teams, if they could let us know, and we can see, as Councillor Hands is suggesting, if a further guidance or guide could be provided that would assist members in that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Buchanan. Well, look, having listened to all the questions and comments from members, I think there is a bit of concern here. But this is a very important issue because we are moving and have moved to being a digital council. So, Mrs. Buchanan, my question would be to you for a bit of advice here. I was going to sort of move that possibly we defer this report then until you bring back a further report. Would that be your advice? I'm just looking for a bit of guidance.
Yes, no problem at all in terms of that, Deputy Provost. Yes, I see no problem in bringing back a further report. The previous recommendation was for a review, and if the outcome of this review from members' perspective is to ask for a further report to come back with detail in terms of what's been discussed, we can certainly do that.
Okay, then, on that basis, members, I'm going to move that we defer this report for consideration of a further report to be brought back to the next, or not the next council, whenever it may be. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Boyd, did you have a, sorry, I've missed you.
Yes, I just want to make a comment on that, if I could, Craig, that would be ideal.
Yes, of course, of course.
No, I think that's great. I think we've all encompassed things. Ron has mentioned about not getting into Teams. I had the same problem. Poor Councillor Failure was a bit demented by the time I was trying to get my stuff forward on to do with something that was on the Teams thing. So I can totally agree with him. And I think we've got to also make sure that if we're bringing this back, we bring forward all the comments that have been made here. I think we do need to be seen to be as visible to the council, or to the people that we represent as much as possible. It works at Westminster, it works in Holyrood, where you can see they're doing videos and they're doing you're in the chamber as well. So I can't see if there's any reason. And as I'm saying, I think all of us would agree, would rather that the current constituents actually get to see what we're saying, what we're doing, and might be attacked at me, or not attacked at me, but said at me how I behave. So I think we should be trying to keep these videos going on as long as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, we have deferred the report, but sorry, I deferred it just as your hand went up, or proposed the deferral.
Yes, Deputy Convener, I believe that Councillor Cheap moved a notice of amendment.
It was not. It was never seconded, and I think because we didn't ask for a seconder, we weren't at that stage. But I believe that Councillor Cheap would be in agreement with a further report to come back and deferring this one.
Yeah, but actually, it's actually fine, Deputy Provost. I'm on the basis of the deferral because my amendment was very modest anyway to all of this, so it may be appropriate next time it comes round anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's it. We'll go. That's that. This item finished with now because we've agreed to defer for a further report. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item number 10, Town Centre Funds, a progress update. You have the report in front of you. I don't, but I'm just about to. And the 4 recommendations. Any questions? No. Any comments? Councillor McMillan-Douglas.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'd just like to refer to the very exciting investment of £77,000 in the purchase by DD8 Music of a property in which they will create a rock and roll memorabilia museum in Kirriemuir. I probably, like a number of councillors, didn't immediately think of Kirriemuir, that wonderful town, as being the centre of rock and roll. But it's superb that this town centre funds is going to be used in Kirriemuir in this way. The renovation of the building is about to start, and all 3 councillors from Kirriemuir and Dean have all worked together in promoting this. And certainly, I think great credit must go to my 2 colleagues, Councillor Provost Proctor and Julie Bell. But mainly, I think we probably all agree that credit must go to Graham Galloway of DD8 and Curie Connections for driving this project forward. So I'm just mentioning one little part of this very important paper, but I think it is an absolutely nugget of good news from Kirriemuir.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan-Douglas. Yes, with my other hat on, my office, as you know, is in Kirriemuir, and when the Bonfest is on, organised by Graham Galloway, the town's just buzzing, absolutely buzzing, and it's very, very good. Not only for Kirriemuir, specifically for Kirriemuir, but for Angus as well. Thank you, Councillor Blaze.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I think we need to remember just kind of what's gone on here. I know that the Town Centre Fund and its application has not been wholly welcomed in Brecon. I have had correspondence from people who are not happy with it, and I've had correspondence from people who are. But we do need to remember just a bit of the history of this. The money was kind of sprung on us with a fairly short timescale to implement it. And then COVID got in the road, so it was extended, and then I think it was increased, wasn't it? But my whole point is, when it comes to town centre regeneration, the money provided in this fund was not enough money to do anything dramatic. And the timescales that we did have meant that we had to move fairly quickly and you know, be sure that we were going to be in a position to get the money spent. But I think going forward, at some point, we're going to have to sit down and have a proper conversation with our communities about what town centres are going to look like in the future, what their purpose is going to be, and what changes we need to make to various things, not least our planning policy, to allow progress to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. And yeah, I would say I agree 100% with what Councillor Brace has just said. I wanted just to raise a small issue on the Montrose one, and I think there's been some email traffic today which has suggested that we will have a meeting to slightly tweak it. I'm very keen that we include the Maritime Mosaics at £10,000, a relatively modest project to sort of improve the town. I would suggest artistically, a lot of the other ones above the line are fairly utilitarian, I would suggest. So I think we're going to manage to achieve that. I think Mr. Ball's made a helpful suggestion, so I think we'll manage to sort that out post-meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Durno?
Thanks, convener. Well, I'm not happy that we're spending 200,000 on a crazy golf feature at the links. Money needs to be spent on the town centre. Our centres have been killed by the parking charges and COVID, and it's time to rebuild. We can't rely on the large retailers coming to towns now, and we should be remodelling in the terms of infrastructure. And we could also have housing in high streets and a more village green, approach or appearance with specialist shops. Money is being made available for this project. It's unacceptable for it to be wasted on a crazy golf project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durno. Councillor Cheap?
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Shouldn't be by surprise there. It was really reading through the report and Mr. Ball's comments in that, and I was just casting our minds back to the council meeting when all of this was approved by Borough with the projects listed in priority. And as in probably one or two other boroughs, Christie, we're having a problem we have our projects, but we're having a problem getting people on board to actually lead on them effectively. And if we can't succeed with that, obviously we want to use the money. But my question really is here, bearing in mind the council agreed the order and priority of projects, can council officers agree locally with local members that monies can be spent in alternative manners, which might not necessarily come through council officially?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheap. We're actually on comments, but I will ask.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Mr. Ball, would that be one for you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, there is delegated authority within the report that the local members and myself, and possibly Director of Finance, can make decisions around which projects are deliverable. So there is the opportunity to move projects around or bring in new projects. The money has to be legally committed by the 31st of March. So that's really the deadline that we're looking towards. That's what we should all be focused on and concentrating on. But up until that time, yes, there is the opportunity, and it wouldn't have to come back to council for approval. That can be done with the local members and myself or Mr. Lorimer.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Sturrock?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I would just like to sort of touch on what Councillor Duff said on the spending profile. We had a communication from Mr. Ball today offering an online meeting to discuss this further, which I do welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Deputy Convener. Well, yes, I agree with Councillor Durno that the money should be spent in town centres, not outside. It says for Scheme A6, 60,000 already in place, just so members are aware that 60,000 is coming out of the Common Good Fund. So that's all coming out from the council. I don't agree with that, but it's been agreed between the ward members that that's where it'll go, so I accept that. However, I do hope that where we have money available afterwards, that we can actually decide at a local level how that money can be spent rather than have to wait for a meeting of council to determine it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Speed?
Thanks, Convener. In terms of our growth in the town centre funding, I guess I'm perhaps looking through this with more kind of optimistic lenses. I think there's quite a varied range of projects that are to be delivered from a tourist app, which is going to be beneficial to attracting people to come and navigate their way around Arbroath and indeed Angus. Restoring the galleries above the library and creating exhibition space for a 2020 tapestry, which you know, I know the group that have been involved in that have spent, you know, hundreds of hours of work producing something that can only be kind of described as, you know, quite stunning and remarkable, that captures Arbroath's history. Bike storage kennels for promoting greater active travel, increasing better health and wellbeing opportunities. Public murals and artworks displayed around the town, which I completely support and know the local artist involved. I think that will be, you know, fantastic to see a few gable end buildings around the town displaying some stunning artworks. We also have improvements to the signal tower, notice boards at St Vincent's, and a contribution towards the renovation works of the Arbroath Courthouse, a building that has sat empty in the centre in our town centre, you know, for a number of years now. I think huge applause for the group that have been behind securing that community asset transfer, because that is going to help to improve the town centre, and it's going to be able to provide something for everyone. You know, I could go on, and with regards to the West Links and the Crazy Golf, I do support this. I appreciate that it's a lot of money. However, this is about upgrading the Crazy Golf infrastructure that's there, but in a way that actually promotes our accessible Angus and accessible Arbroath vision, and looks to build on that, because this activity is going to be able to reach out to everyone from young to old. It's fully inclusive. Wheelchair users, people with mobility problems will be able to take part. It really will be an activity for all the family. And from what I'm led to believe, there are only a few of these golf setups in the whole of Europe. So again, Arbroath really is going to be able to provide something for everyone along the West Links, making it accessible to all. And I know firsthand that, you know, it's not often that people can get the opportunity to take part in something, especially if they do have an access requirement. So I'm kind of positive about what Arbroath is going to be able to deliver within these projects and the difference that will make. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor King?
Unmute. Yes, Deputy Provost. I've seen an awful lot of these sort of things on several occasions over my 30-odd years as a councillor. And, you know, they all start off wonderfully well, and it's all going to do this, and it's going to do that, and it's going to do the next thing. And at the end of the day, most of them don't do very much. The High Street in Arbroath has been tarted up several times. We had a town regeneration fund a number of years ago, of which I was the chair, and not a single business hardly was interested in doing anything. And it was the council that had to spend all the money on various bits and pieces. Most of what's in the list for Arbroath is reasonably worthwhile. Whether it will make the difference that everybody seems to think it's going to make, I doubt it very much. But the one thing that does stick in my craw is the West Links Crazy Golf. I do not see why we are spending £212,000 to put in Crazy Golf at the West Links. Crazy Golf is something of the 1960s. That money would be much better spent in getting on with the signal tower improvements for phases 2 and 3. And that's where it should have been put in the first place. The signal tower is nowhere less close to the centre of town. It's right beside the harbour. It could be a very significant draw for tourists. It should be a significant draw for tourists, but it needs a lot of money spent on it to bring it up to a reasonable standard for the future. It's had money spent on it in the past. It needs even more money spent on it for the future. And one particular thing it needs more parking. And there is an area outside it which could be used for parking. It's got concrete blocks in amongst the grass as it is. but I think there's a lot can be done to improve that building, which could be committed by the 31st of March. And let's forget about the crazy golf. I know that other members are keen on it, but that's 3 of us so far out of 7 who are saying we don't think the crazy golf is a good place to spend the money.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Vaughan?
Yeah, I would just like to come in, Deputy Provost, and give my back into Councillor Speed and what she said about where the money in Arbroath's been spent. I am conscious of the other 3 members there mentioning the crazy golf, and I just wonder if I can pose the question to Ian Lorimer. I know we've committed to this. Is it something that can be discussed again? I'm not saying to reverse the decision, but is it something to be discussed again on the basis of the Common Good's already approved the 60,000 and there's further money coming here? I don't see it as a bad project, but I would like to reflect on the other 3 members and what they're saying and see if we can come to some kind of consensus or you know, find out a little bit more, not a little bit more about it because we've been through it 100 times, but certainly discuss it again.
We're on comments, but that's okay. Mr. Lorimer?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. If there is a view among there was a meeting of Arbroath members yesterday morning where all of these projects was discussed. I'm aware Councillor Vaughan was not able to attend that meeting, but all other Arbroath members were able to attend. So we did discuss these various projects. I thought we had more or less an agreed way forward, subject to 2 or 3 projects having to be looked at again. If the view is that another meeting to discuss that particular project is required, then I'm happy to organise that. But it would need to be organised very quickly, because as Mr. Ball has pointed out, we do have to have the projects legally committed within the next 7 weeks, and that does bring a number of constraints in terms of what can be done now within that timescale. But if the view is another meeting is required, then I can organise that. Thank you.
I'm certainly not saying we shouldn't be spending it there. I'm just asking that, and I am aware that I couldn't attend yesterday's meeting, which was a late call off by me. Slapped the wrist for that one, Ian. Apologies, but it was unavoidable on my part. But I would certainly like to sit and discuss it and try and get at least a consensus with the members and try and even convince the other 3 that are flagging slightly behind on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd.
Yes, thank you, Craig. Just a couple of things. It's nice. I sit and watch here thinking we're 6 miles down the coast, and we managed to, all 3 of us managed to get good consensuses all along. So we got on really well and get these things sorted out well in advance as well. And but I remember when we discussed this, all 3 of us together, at the first indication, we all were very much highlighted that it is meant to be town centre. This is where the money is from. Our opinion polls that came back to us clearly said, don't you dare spend money elsewhere. If the money has been allocated for town centre, then give it to the town centre. Well done, Brenda, for bringing this forward. I like the things you sent us the other day. These things are very inexpensive, and I think it's great. But come on, 7 of you, get your act together, get some form of consensus. But do what is actually where the monies were meant for. Sorry, I can't put my video on. My video doesn't seem to be working. Take care, all.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Anyone else? Comments? No. Okay. Well, we have the 4 recommendations in front of us. They're all for noting. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And the final item, members, is the agenda item number 11, the Angus Alive update. And I believe Kirsty's with us. She's on the meeting. Kirsty, do you want to introduce the report, or shall I ask members for any questions first?
I think Vivian was going to be introducing the report.
No. I'm just giving. I always give the report authors the opportunity should they wish to do so. But if you don't, no, that's fine. We'll just go straight to questions. Any questions from members?
Chair, sorry, I think Kirsty was trying to say Vivian was going to be.
Yeah.
Moving.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't want to steal Vivian's thunder, but I'm also happy to do it if.
Vivian, sorry, I didn't hear that. My signal's coming up as it's poor.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Provost.
like to introduce this report, but Kirsty, as you know, has the detail from the Angus Alive perspective. This is the next in a series of reports that we've been bringing to you to consider for Angus Alive. Clearly, there are ongoing issues in relation to the impact from COVID-19, and we have to have our service specification continues to vary from the original specification that was agreed, and you'll note in the report where those variations are being suggested, and we're asking you to agree those variations. There's also a noting of the current financial position, and as we heard earlier today, there are some ongoing challenges with that in relation to when, if and when Angus Alive can open up services again. And that is something that we're keeping under very close review. The Angus Alive has made quite a number of successful applications for external funding, and are continuing to access the furlough scheme to support the business being sustainable over the next period. But really what I would like to draw members' attention to today are the outputs from our rapid improvement events. We've now held 3, and you can see in the report the detail of what was discussed against each of those. But I really wanted to bring your attention to page 128, where we're talking about health and well-being and looking at the development of, or certainly a consideration around social prescribing and offering around that, work with our young people, thinking about our customer services offering, and also what does the future of model of service delivery look like. I was really encouraged by the last rapid improvement event. All partners were represented there, Health and Social Care Partnership, as well as the third sector. And I think we've got some really good discussions going on now that hopefully will result in some transformational change over the period that still enables us to have a good culture and leisure service in Angus going forward. I'm sure, Deputy Provost, that Kirsty could add to that, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Vivienne. Kirsty, do you want to add to it, or shall I ask members for questions?
I think it's maybe just important to add at the moment that there have obviously been a couple of weeks that have gone past since the paper was written. The situation remains stark, as it does across the rest of the economy, in terms of the lockdown still being in place. In terms of our workforce, the vast majority of the team are furloughed or partially furloughed. There's only a small number of people that are working part-time or full-time to keep the organisation moving forward and planning for the future. I'm delighted to confirm that there are things that are happening for the future. We are in the process of finalising an upgrade to what was going to be now the visitor centre at Miniki Country Park, for example. That will no longer be just the ranger base, and it's been transformed during lockdown. We've also just recently launched our new app. I think I mentioned that last time that was in the offing. That has now actually gone live. It went live on Burns night, and we've now had 32 sessions that have been held on that, with an average attendance of 45 at each class, and that includes 9 cycling classes where you actually need to have a fixed bike at home if you're going to be able to participate. And the highest attendance is 110 people at one of our group exercise classes. So we are looking innovatively at how we continue to engage with people going forward, and we're now looking at how we can use that app not only in sport and leisure but also across culture, including museums, galleries and archives, and also into our libraries and into Countryside Adventure, to continue to engage with people during lockdown, but it is really challenging for the team, and I just want to take this opportunity to say another thank you to them for the hard work that they are doing and for their patience as we go through this challenging time.
Thank you very much. Yes, I did notice certain things on your Twitter feed yesterday. Some of the instructors that were on with body attack and yoga, I think it was. Not that I attended them, but I certainly noticed them. Councillor Durno, a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question of Vivian. Obviously, with Angus Alive being in financial difficulties just now, and you know, the town centre money from the Scottish Government that we are actually given to Angus Alive, which is about 83,474, if my adding up's quite good. If Angus Alive gets back on their feet again, will they actually repay this money back in the town centre fund? Because we have to actually say to the Scottish Government that we're spending a town centre regeneration fund propping up Angus Alive, and it doesn't actually look really good. So I just wondered what the situation would be after that. Thank you.
Vivian or Kirsty, do you want to answer this one in this forum, or would you rather send an email to Councillor Durno after the meeting?
I'm happy to send an email to Councillor Durno with the detail around that. But certainly in terms of Angus Alive being an arm's length external organisation with Angus Council, you know, there are clear financial relationships between the two organisations, and we're absolutely all over the financial position just now. Certainly when members later next month consider the budget, there will be issues in there that need to be looked at as well. But I think the detail on this is better taken offline, Deputy Provost.
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Provost, can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Durno's indicated that this is like, or she's presuming that this is a loan to Angus Alive for the signal tower from the Town Centre Regeneration Fund. This isn't a loan, this is a payment towards doing up the signal tower. And I would like you, Lorimer, if you can, just to come in to clarify that or not to Councillor Durno, because that's certainly what's been discussed. And if it is just a loan and we're getting repaid back, that's not spending the money by the end of March, that's actually having the income coming back. So I would just like that clarified more for Councillor Durno, because I think I'm correct.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wan. Mr. Lorimer's got his hand up anyway, so I'm sure that's what he's going to tell us. Mr. Lorimer, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Yes, that is indeed why I'd raised my hand. I think the thing to remember about the buildings and the properties that are run by Angus Alive is that they are owned by Angus Council. So the signal tower, for example, is an Angus Council owned property. The Town Centre Fund is indeed for upgrade works to the signal tower in this instance. So it's not a loan. It's not. There's no connection between the financial challenges that Angus Alive currently have because of the pandemic and the proposal in terms of the town centre. That is about an upgrade to the signal tower, which, as I say, is an Angus Council building. So hopefully that clarifies that one, Deputy Provost. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Durno? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, that's great. It's just that the actual general public don't know the difference between Angus Alive and Angus Council, and they would be asking, you know, why is this money being spent on an Angus Alive property being used by Angus Alive? So it just has to be clarified to them that the council is spending the money on natural buildings and not actually on the organisation. Because actually Angus Alive, you know, financially is getting over 2 million from the Scottish Government as well in furlough and government schemes. So it's just to sort of let my constituents know exactly what the financial situation is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald?
Just a comment, Deputy Provost.
Okay, Councillor Wan, is yours a comment or a question?
Apologies, mine is an old hand.
All right, okay. Okay, Councillor MacDonald, we'll go to, unless there's any, yep, it's the only hand that's left. So comments now.
Just thanks for the update, Kirsten. That's great to hear about the visitor centre at Maniki. I just wanted to also, just while we can, thank all the staff that have been at our country parks. They've been absolutely mobbed at Crombie and Maniki, and there's obviously been extensive work to try and manage the traffic and manage what everybody's been doing, both at Maniki and Crombie. And I just think that the work that's been done and the communications that have come out have been clear, straightforward, keep off the ice, don't park on the verges, you know, really, really good stuff. So yeah, just wanted to share my thanks to the team for that, and also pleased that there's progress at Maniki.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Macmillan Douglas.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. I would just like to welcome this report and compliment the people who put it together. It's really good to see Angus Council and Angus Alive working collaboratively so well and looking to the future, as well as dealing in the, as Kirsty said, this stark situation which they are facing at the moment. I'd like to also compliment the strong strategic and financial management from Angus Alive, which I think over a period of time has been very impressive. I'd also like to note the huge, in fact, the absolutely fundamental help that the UK government's furlough scheme has helped Angus Alive with. I think it's over £1 million. I can't remember the exact figure. And of course, if that money hadn't been coming from the UK government, then frankly, Angus Alive would not now be in existence. There have been so many good things happening. The efforts to get the swimming pools reopened in difficult circumstances when we were never quite sure whether we were in a lockdown or we were out of a lockdown, I thought was impressive. Unfortunately, it didn't extend to Kirriemuir, but that was no fault of Angus Alive, who were trying to do their best in very difficult circumstances. Two more points. Looking to the future, I think it's so important that Angus Alive works closely with the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership to provide services that assist people's health and promote well-being. And I know that you very much got that in mind. Finally, Angus Alive must also work closely with schools so that recreational facilities are available locally to young people, because this is really a way in which we can surely help our mental health. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Macmillan Douglas. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I just really want to pay tribute to the Angus Alive staff who weren't furloughed, because as has been alluded to, they've had to adapt and readapt, and they've used their initiative incredibly well. They've worked on a new sports strategy, and an Angus cultural strategy is on its way as well. The app, I think, has been terrific, and I have used it for aerobics, and it's live streamed and then it's recorded, so you can do the same thing a couple of times a week, so it's great. I hope that the Westminster government will in fact lengthen its furlough scheme, because it's supposed to finish at the end of March, and I doubt very much if this will be, if it's not continued, it will be quite difficult, as you've said, Councillor Macmillan Douglas. But I do feel that we have to give so much thanks to the people who have worked throughout this time, having to report to the board on sometimes about a fortnightly, if not weekly basis. So it's been quite a heavy schedule for everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Boyd.
Sorry. Hello. Thank you. Councillor MacDonald beat me to with most of it. It was wonderful to see what's happening up at Maniki and Crombie Country Parks, which is part of our area. But I think you know this already, Kirsty, but let's keep that plate spinning and making sure that the overflow car park at Crombie can open as a matter of great urgency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. And yeah, I think Councillor Macmillan Douglas touched on the financial management of Angus Alive, which I think has been extremely good. I think both with the Angus Alive staff and the support that we've had from Mr. Lawson from Finance, which I think has been allowed the cash flow to be forecast pretty accurately, and that certainly looked very healthy over the last 9 months or so. And obviously we don't quite know when we're going to get out of the woods. As to source of the furlough money, I would point out to Councillor Macmillan Douglas that we all pay taxes. So this isn't some sort of gift coming from the gods. This is our money, our tax money, being used to support people while they can't work, and that's been used in many countries in the world. It's not unique to the UK, and I don't feel we need to be particularly grateful. It's simply our money being used to support people who can't work, and we all pay taxes and we're entitled to that.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. I think when Councillor Devine was making a comment, in my recollection, the furlough scheme, Lynn, I think goes to the end of April, not the end of March. I think it is. I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Convener, Deputy Provost. There is one group, while I agree that we should pay tribute to Angus Alive and the staff who have been furloughed and non-furloughed, there is one other group we ought to just say thank you to, and that is the Angus Council officers who are working with them, because I think that it's a partnership here between Angus Alive and the Angus Council officers in order to make sure that this is going forward. Viv and her team should be thanked for working at it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. Anyone else for comments? Okay, we have the 7 recommendations in front of us, 4 for noting, 3 to agree. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And that, members, concludes the business today. So I hope you all have a nice rest of day, whatever you're doing. I know it's probably sitting in front of a computer screen or on a telephone or something. It will certainly not be going out for a jog in this weather. Thank you all for attending. Thank the officers and the IT hosts, Mr. McCaskill and his staff, and I will see you all soon. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.